Today marks the 53rd day of protests in Iran following the death of a young woman who was arrested for allegedly wearing her hijab incorrectly. Now, 328 protesters have been killed so far, and almost 15,000 protesters have been arrested. And now authorities in Iran are threatening to execute all of them, which is absolutely terrifying and honestly not surprising when you consider the authoritarian nature of the authorities there. Now, the Iranian parliament is now threatening to execute them. Specifically, the death of Masha Amini sparked the protests, but these protests have to do with a lot more than one person. She was the spark. It has to do with the way the country is being governed, the economic conditions the country remains in, and also the treatment of people in Iran by the authorities. Fueled by widespread anger over social and economic conditions, including high unemployment, and the corruption and monopolization of political power by the Shia clerical establishment, protests that started in the Kurdish provinces soon morphed into wider anti-government rallies throughout the country. And let's just be real, the economic conditions in Iran are absolutely dire. And while I 100% support the protesters, we here in the United States with our government, we have a lot to do with the economic conditions in Iran because of the sanctions that were implemented by Trump and were not repealed by President Joe Biden. Inflation in Iran is running at 54%, and food prices have risen by more than 100% since President Ebrahim Raisi took office in August. Last May, his government began removing subsidies worth up to $15 billion on the import of basic foods, medicine, and animal feed, although it said there would be some cash assistance to some families. And Iran's youth, by the way, is really suffering the brunt of this terrible economic situation. 2/3 of Iran's 85 million population are under 30 years of age, and some of the worst affected, some 27% are without work.
Wow, we thought our millennials had problems.
Yeah, and we do, but not to that extent.
Okay, so first thing I'd like to say is F the mullahs. So anytime somebody tells you they're a religious leader, but they're actually running the government, they're a fraud, complete fraud. And Ayatollah is at the top of that list. He's like, oh, I'm a holy man and I speak for Allah. Do you? When did Allah pick you to be the team captain? Show me how he picked you, you utter fraud, okay? And conveniently, look at the Ayatollah sitting on a mountain of cash. And then all of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that he doles out all the money and all the contracts to. Funny how the most religious people in Iran are also coincidentally the richest because they use their power to rob the rest of the population in Iran, because that's who they are. They're crooks. By the way, is it because they're Muslim? No. Almost every religious leader in this country that's in the right wing, that's evangelical, that's a prosperity preacher, is just as big a crook. And you name any religion, find their religious leaders that are right wing in politics, and I will show you, guaranteed, a crook who's the least holy person in the entire country. So now this revolution, well, it's not quite a revolution yet. It's a rebellion, but this thing ends in blood. And
yeah, it's scary. It really is scary stuff because at this point, the authorities in Iran have had it with the protesters. There are 15,000 people who've been arrested, and they're threatening to execute them. So I want to get to that because I don't think that they're bluffing, and it takes so much courage and bravery to participate in these protests. You have major public figures in Iran, women taking their headdresses off to make a point. So on Sunday, legislators called on Iran's judiciary to take decisive action against the protesters, whose actions they referred to as riots and seditions, saying that the US was targeting Iran to effect regime change. Look, the United States absolutely meddles in the governance and the business of other countries, including Iran. I'm not minimizing that. However, the United States didn't have the religious authorities arrest a young woman for allegedly wearing her hijab incorrectly, and the United States didn't kill her. So there's a lot that the Iranian authorities are refusing to take any responsibility for, but that's to be expected. What I'm terrified of is innocent people literally being executed because of their unwillingness to change.
Yeah, but it could end in blood in a different way. I'm gonna get back to that in a second, but two things. So is it possible that America would agitate for regime change and do it in a way that's subtle enough and really gets the local population to rise up? It is not only possible, they did that in which country? Many countries, but one of them, and the best example is actually Iran.
Yeah.
They did it back in the 1950s. Is it the case here? I would be dramatically surprised. Why? Because America is good guys? No, because the CIA at this point is a bunch of bumbling clowns. So back in the day, they used to be ruthlessly efficient. Now, I mean, they've tried at least 2 to 3 coups in Latin America in the last 10, 15 years, and every time they bungled it all over themselves. Remember when they tried one in Venezuela? Idiots. I mean, thank God that they're totally and utterly incompetent. But this is not the CIA. This has got organic written all over it. That's why you see the gigantic crowds that they cannot contain. So I don't think it's them. I could be wrong, but I would be shocked if they were good. I want to talk about the animals who killed this poor lady.
And then lied about and said that she had a cardiac arrest as she was 22.
Yeah, no, they beat her to death. But think about that, and I'm sorry if this is triggering, but think about that jail cell where a bunch of older men.
I don't want to think about it. It's disgusting and it makes me so angry. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You should say it. It just makes me.
No, I know.
It's really hard to think about and visualize.
It is hard to think about. No, the reason why I want you to visualize those men beating her when she's defenseless in that room and killing her. They're the weakest, most pathetic men on the planet. Goddamn animals, okay? And that's what happens when you have corruption, and that's what happens when you have theocracy. You embolden the worst people in your country. So by the way, when you hear people like Lauren Boebert saying, we should have a Christian nation here, that's what she's looking forward to.
1000%, yeah.
Not necessarily that particular act, but she's looking forward to our mullahs here in America.
The morality police.
The morality police. Yeah. Oh yeah, we're finally gonna listen to our rules. And if you don't, we beat defenseless women to death. Goddamn animals. All right, so I'm super clear about that. But now the part of the story that gets to the conclusion, right? So they're threatening to murder 15,000 protesters.
Yeah.
Now, they might do some of that, they might do all of that, and that would drench them in blood, and I don't, so that could then have the protest die down because it's like a mortal threat to everyone's life, and it just scares them into compliance. Has that happened in human history? All the time, okay? Or it could do the opposite. Then the family members and the friends and all of those young people, 2/3 of the country is under 30 years old, that's amazing. And young people are the most volatile. You go execute 1,000 of their friends or 15,000, and there's a scenario where they storm the palaces and they go, enough of this BS. And has that happened before in Iran? Yeah, that was the Iranian Revolution, where in that case, young Muslim men stormed the palaces and got rid of the Shah, etc., and hung whoever hadn't escaped.
Yeah.
So that might be in their future.
Well,
watch out what you mess around with.
All right, one final thing I'll say. The protesters are undeterred, and I wanted to just quickly comment on their bravery. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I want to say it again. Because despite these threats of execution, despite the fact that literally thousands of people have already been arrested, hundreds of people have been killed, they're undeterred, the protesters are. And so I want to go to the public figures who are willing to risk it all, okay? A young Kurdish rapper named Saman Hussein was just sentenced to death for supporting the protesters, okay? So a public figure put everything on the line and will now likely lose his life to support these protesters. And I wanna go to this young woman who took her hijab off So this is, I just want to make sure I get her name right. So national beach soccer team players refused to sing during Iran's anthem at the beginning of a match against the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. And it's not just the athletes speaking out. So here you see a photo of a woman in Iran who took her headdress off, a cultural earthquake. The most well-known Iranian actress, Taraneh Ali-Doutsi, remove her hijab publicly. Another blow lands against gender apartheid regime. Young women in Iran started this revolution, and now popular actress followed their path. Women, life, freedom, and then the hashtag, of course, references the young woman who was beaten to death after being arrested for not wearing her hijab correctly, allegedly.
So last couple of things I gotta say. Number one, the right wing in Iran right now are targeting who? Young women. They're saying the real problem is these young women who won't obey, okay? We're gonna show you a clip later in this show of Jesse Waters saying the real problem in this country is young women who won't obey, okay? So right wingers are the same all over. And by the way, to the bigots who say, oh yeah, those mullahs and ayatollahs, that's how the Muslims are. No, the heroes that are fighting and risking their lives for freedom are also Muslim. I know the right wing has trouble understanding things, so I'll talk slowly. And finally, America, don't do anything. If America interferes here, that's the only way you could ruin it. Just let them do what they're doing. I don't want idiot neocons coming in and going, this is a good moment here. The Iranian people would like to be bombed next. No, they would not like to be bombed. Stop, get out, don't do anything. All you're gonna do is bungle it, you idiots, okay? Let them handle their own affairs. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.